Welcome to Spin Justice with me, Hayley Owens, the podcast where I'll be talking about anything from health and fitness to the injustices of the world and everything in between. I've worked within the criminal justice system for over 20 years and have more recently taken to teaching indoor cycling, otherwise known as spin. Each week I'll be talking to a different guest about a topic that's personal to them, whether it be to raise awareness or just because. Most episodes will contain strong language because of who I am as a person, so if that's not for you, then probably best to swerve. Any opinions expressed by me are my own. Today's episode is sponsored by DNA Boxing School of Excellence. Big up to Danger and the team there for all the amazing things they're doing in the community, whether it be kids classes or one-to-one boxing training. So if you or anyone you know are interested in improving their fitness, because why wouldn't you, make sure you give them a shout. Today's episode is sponsored by Southpaw Building and Property Services. Shout out to Julian and the lads who are covering all types of building work, whether it's extensions, drives, landscaping and new builds, covering a 30-mile radius of Birmingham and local districts. Welcome,
Thank
Russell
you.
Payne, aka the Talking Tradesman.
That's me.
Merched up.
Mate, you are representing really well, so I appreciate
So
that.
I've got the
Thank you.
t-shirt,
Yeah,
I've got the hat and I've got the hoodie in case I get cold.
fully merched.
Fully merched. Well,
Love it.
obviously, if someone's going to give me stuff to wear, I'm wearing it, mate. All day.
Perfect.
So I thought, and in my head when you gave it to me, because obviously I've recently been on your podcast.
You have indeed. So this is like the return fixture for me.
Yeah, which is not, we were just saying, weren't we, how nice it is to do the other side.
That's it. I'm just chilled now. The pressure's all on you. You got to make this sound good. I'm just here.
And I was just saying, I'm on the pick tonight, which means that from like, we'll do ours now. Obviously, I'll go home and sort the kids. And then, although it's like work, it's easy, innit?
Yeah.
Because you like.
Yeah, that's it. I haven't had to plan anything. Just turn up and talk.
Yeah, it's so nice. So how's your day been?
Not bad, mate. Not bad. Nice little morning. Off to the gym.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be honest with you. The last few days have been mad. So my head has been like, you know what it gets.
Yeah.
It's just like spaghetti. So going to the gym chilled me out a bit.
Yeah,
So yeah,
nice.
quick gym session, then shut down here for you today.
So no work today?
No. Well, sort of. I've got lads on a job.
Yeah.
So I started a job this morning. Dropped my lad off. And then got into the gym, and then I'm down here and I'll pick him up at the end of the day, make sure he hasn't wrecked the house.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So you've got a painting and decorating firm?
Yeah, so painter and decorator. I'm third generation, so I've been in the business. I often refer to it, I was born with a brush in my hand, so I started going to work with my old man when I was about 8.
Yeah.
And took over the business at 17. Like I say, I'm third generation, my son's fourth generation. So yeah, I've been in and around construction pretty much my whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've had, we are going to come on to some of the other jobs as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I know some particular jobs that that I want to talk to you about. But I didn't realise you took over your dad's business.
It was more, to be honest with you, yeah, it's a bit fractured because my grandfather started the business, but it's actually my mother's father. And then my dad went into business with him. Me and my dad fell out. I'm sure we might touch on that. Yeah. And I then took over more so from my granddad's side of things. Right. But yeah, the whole family are in the trades.
And what's the business called?
RDP Painters and Decorators is a decorating business covering the whole of the West Midlands for people round. So I'm not too far from here. I grew up in Redditch, so just south of Birmingham. But yeah, we cover the whole of the West Midlands, specialise in high-end domestic, but we've covered all demographics. So we do everything to do with the painting and decorating. And
was it always called RDP? Or did you give it that name when you took it over?
Yeah, that was when I took it over.
Right.
So my granddad would have been, it was Dave Harris, I think I'll try and remember now what he was even trading as.
So you grew up in Redditch then? Because you're Stourport way now, aren't you?
Yeah, I live in Stourport now, on Severn. Moved over there about 6-7 years ago.
It's nice, isn't it?
It's quaint. Yeah, it's chilled. It's like going back in time to a lot of extents, like an old fashioned town. A lot of little bars and bistros, and yeah, it's relaxed.
Yeah.
You were in Birmingham. We're sat in Birmingham. It's like Birmingham is getting more and more like London. Do you know what I mean?
God, tell me about it.
It's manic. It's busy.
Yeah.
Stourport isn't. So.
How did it feel coming over this morning?
To be fair, I haven't been into town for ages.
No.
So it's the usual, like, I know where I'm going, but they change the roads every 2 minutes, so I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, it's always, it's just chaos, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like high energy in town.
It was nice when I came over to Stourport to record the episode with you. It was just a lovely high street. Just felt like I was on holiday.
It's like going back in time, isn't it? It's one of those little towns, though, where everyone knows everyone knows everyone's business.
Yeah.
But weirdly, because I'm not from there, nobody really does know me.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah. So I want to talk a bit about your background because I know little bits. And obviously I sent you a plan and a bit of a brief
Yeah, of course, that's cool.
about what I wanted to touch on. But you saying that you took over from like your dad and your granddad with the painting. What was your upbringing like?
So to go back, what I would say is my upbringing up until the age of 8 was like Brady Bunch. It was like normal 2.4 kids. We lived in a nice area, nice house.
Yeah.
Mum and dad together, little sister. I got a sister that's 4 years younger than me, and everything was unremarkable. I haven't actually got many memories prior to then, and I think that's because everything was normal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the memories started, like the pivotal point for me as a person was when my mum and dad split up, which was when I was 8.
Okay.
So the less normal thing about that was my mum left. So my mum had an affair. She left with this person and left me and my younger sister with my dad, which is it's normally the other way around. Like regardless of the circumstances of the split, the kids normally stay with the mum, but we were left with my dad while my mum went and sort of sorted out her new life, I guess. I was of an age, because I was 8 years old, I understood what had gone on.
Yeah.
So because of that, I'd got the loyalty to my dad, so I stayed with him.
Of course.
A couple of years down the line, my sister, it's hard, isn't it? Because like when you're young, it's timescales wise. It might have been a year, might have been 2 years. My sister moved in with my mum. So me and my younger sister actually grew up separately. So I grew up with my dad. My sister grew up with my mum. The thing around that, and I see it very differently now because I'm older, I can sort of look back at it with different eyes. But when my mum and dad split, it hit my dad very hard. And he always liked to drink anyway, but he definitely turned more to drink. So in essence, for me, it ended up being like almost a double abandonment. My mum had left. And then my dad kind of checked out in many ways as well. So from that age, my dad, I think he sold like the family house within not very long. And then I remember we moved like 6-7 times. We were moving every 6 months, every year, one house to another. I was raised essentially in a pub,
Yeah.
And that was, like I say, I'll bring that up because it's character building.
Yeah, it is.
And the more I reflect on my life now, and a lot of the stuff that I did and the way that I behaved when I was younger relates back to it. So it's like the female abandonment through my mum leaving, played out in my later relationships. And obviously the same, I kind of, as I say, although my dad didn't leave, in many ways as a parent, he'd checked out. So I raised myself was a lot of the point, which led me then to taking over the business at such a young age.
Yeah. So if you were 8 then when your mum left, that mean your sister was only 4?
Yeah, she'd have been 3-4 years old, yeah.
And obviously she did go on to move in with your mum a bit later. But what was your relationship like with your mum?
Fractured.
Yeah. Do you have contact with her now?
Yeah. We speak now. And it is probably worth saying, to be honest, like, because a lot of the stuff that I'll talk about, like, I can be open and honest about my feelings towards what happened. But like my dad, for example, we went through a really rough patch. We didn't speak for 8 years at one time. We've got a good relationship now, and he's in a lot of ways turned his life around.
Right.
But what happened,
Yeah, you can't undo that.
And yeah, the mum leaving thing. I mean, what I'd say about it, Hayley, is what I remember from that time. I'd gone from being a kid who saw his mum every day. My mum was a housewife, so she was at home. I went to school. I saw her every day. She cooked the dinner. You know what I mean? It was like that traditional family dynamic. And then one day, it was just like, boom. Gone. And I remember I came home from school. I remember my mum and dad being weird. Like, there was just, I picked up on something going on. And my dad went, come on, we're going for a walk. And we never went for a walk. Like, we got 2 dogs at the time. My mum always walked the dogs. And I thought, all right, this is odd. And we went for a walk to the local park. And when I got home, my mum was gone. Like, she'd left. Took the dogs, actually. Took the dogs, left the kids. So,
Wow.
yeah. So she had gone, and then my dad sat me down and was like, look, this is what's happened. Your mum's left. She's gone off with another bloke. So I was told instantly what had happened. But the most, I think, impactful thing about that was that from that point on, I think, again, times might be a little bit off, but I want to say it was at least a month, maybe longer, before I heard anything from my mum.
Mm.
And at that point, to me, at that age, that felt like 6 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And by the time she then got back in touch, she was obviously off sorting out her crisis and her own life.
Mm.
But by the time she got back in touch, I was like, everything's changed.
Mm.
And no, if I'm honest, I don't think our relationship has ever recovered from that.
I don't think you can recover like fully from that.
No.
How do you feel about that now that you're a parent? Has it impacted on your parenting?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's a hard one, mate, because I look at things quite stoically now.
Mm.
So I wouldn't be who I am now if it wasn't for what I went through then. So although my parenting, like my upbringing, was far from ideal, I wouldn't be who I was. I wouldn't have developed a lot of like the skills and resilience that I've now got.
Mm.
So I'd be a different person. I'd be in a different point in my life if I'd have had that perfect upbringing.
Mm.
So I'm not resentful of it because in many ways it's built me. It's who I am now, and I'm happy with who I am now.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, what was the first question? I've gone off.
Impacting your parenting.
Oh, right. Yeah. I've said this many times. I feel like my own parenting example gave me the perfect example of how not to be.
Mm.
So I've always been very conscious of how I felt as a kid and trying to not put that onto mine. So yeah, I've always made sure that, you know, the basics. I've never let my kids down. If I say I'm going to do something, I always do it.
Yeah.
Because I experience the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And like you say, it's such a rare example of the mom leaving.
Yeah, it's not normally the case, is it?
No.
So.
And I'm just trying to think of how I would feel. Because I've got friends that don't have as strong relationships with their parents or the mums that I've got. And I think it affects them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, a lot of men are like mommy's boys underneath, aren't they? I never had that closeness or protectiveness from that side. My sister's really close to my mum because they grew up together.
Of course.
And if I'm honest, the dynamic, I think what happened, I stayed with my dad, my sister went with my mum, and it was kind of like, well, you've got that one, I've got this one kind of thing. So my mum put a lot of time and attention into my sister, and they're tight as a result of that.
Right.
But yeah,
Are you close to your sister?
Yeah. Me and my sister get on fine.
Yeah.
Probably recently, life has she's had kids recently. I've got a lot going on, so we don't see each other as much as we'd like to. But yeah, there's no issues between us.
Yeah, that's good. So with taking over the business then at 17.
Yeah.
So really, you know, you've had to grow up a lot quicker. So taking over a business at 17 is a big deal, I would say. You know, that's not many 17-year-olds. I mean, my lad's nearly 15, and I can't imagine him taking over. Mate, he can't do anything.
Yeah.
He couldn't take over a business in 2 years.
It's looking back now at my age now, it's like it seems mad. When I was 17, I thought I could take over the world. So I was fine. But like what happened there, because I stayed with my dad, and like I say, my home situation was crap. Like his drinking had increased. He'd married again with somebody else that drinks. God. It had just spiraled. So my home life was like, I just wanted to get out of there. It was quite volatile. So I got to the stage where I did well in school. I started doing my A-levels and decided I was done with academia. So thought, right, I need to go and get a job here. I need to like adjust my own sort of like living circumstances. So I went off and I did a year doing agency work. And I remember at the time as well that you'd get paid more if you did the heavy lifting work. So I went and found all the heavy lifting jobs that I could. Did that for a year and then thought, you know what, actually being a decorator is way better than this. It was my granddad at the time. And he turned around to me and went, Ross, you've got all the skills to be a decorator. What are you doing? Yeah. So I then went into decorating, took over the business, as I say, at 17, because me and my dad's relationship was that badly fractured. Had a big bust up with my dad at 17, moved out of the house, and then didn't speak for 8 years. So I was forced to take over the business at that age.
Yeah. Where did you live?
Moved in with my mum.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, at 17, I mean, my mum had gone through a couple of marriages. She was living in a property where there was space for me. So I kind of moved in, but had enough room to basically never see each other, really.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, it was more out of necessity. But again, like I said before, I'm glad it all happened the way that it did.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're in the decorating trade from a young age, then where did your other jobs come into it? Because I want to talk about one of them in particular. You know which one I'm on about. So
yeah, absolutely. No, that's cool. So I took over the business at 17. Started. It all went really well, if I'm honest. I had a massive sort of misconception. I thought at 17, people are going to look at me and go, he's way too young for this. But it wasn't that way. I picked up work. I was very lucky. I had a good relationship with my granddad. So my granddad, absolute legend of a bloke, and he was more like a father than my grandfather. So when I picked up the business, he was still trading, and we kind of balanced out. I picked up more work. He worked with me for a long period of time. So I kind of took over the business, but he was still in the business. So I was kind of mentored while I was doing the work. But I got to a stage, so if we fast forward to the point when I was in my early 20s, met my ex-wife, got into a relationship, and got to the point in life, as you do, where you want to buy a house. Business was going well. I remember I'd gone through like 4 years of building my business, building the books to make it look like I earned good money. So I went to the bank and I turned around and went, I want a mortgage. And they went, yeah, no worries, we can give you a mortgage. But the mortgage they would give me was enough to buy like a 1-bed flat. At the time, I thought I need a family house. That was where I was aiming up to. It's a mad one, really, because I think most people, you have it imposed upon you, don't you, that the image of success is nice house, nice car. And it's that whole like a man's house is his castle kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's this big like drive to buy a house, buy a house, buy a house. So I'd got that in my head. And I was doing everything I could to do that. And I remember, like I say, I built my business up, so on paper it looked great. Went to the bank and I can't remember. I think at the time, this will tell you how long ago it was, I needed about 130 grand to buy a house, like the house that I wanted. And they offered me about 80 on the mortgage.
Right.
So I was like, well, that's no good to me.
Yeah.
You know. So I started looking around at what I could do. And the main issue was I was self-employed. So as a self-employed person, it was like I'd got the plague. Like your money is not guaranteed. So at the time, it was my ex-wife. She saw a job advert in the paper to with on-target earnings within 3 months of 60 grand a year.
Right.
So I was like, right, okay, what's this? And the job advert was to work as a bailiff.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, with where my head was at the time, and I look back at this time in my life really differently now. But I look back at it and I thought, yeah, I could do that. Like, I could do that. And at the end of the day, for 60 grand a year within 3 months, we're sweet.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what I did. So I went and applied for the job. First job interview I'd ever been to.
Yeah.
Got offered the position. Now I know what people are going to think, like bailiffs are up there with like traffic wardens and that kind of thing. But the work I did, it was, so I was court certificated. We just enforced warrants for local authorities. So did things like collecting business rates and all that kind of thing. There's a big misconception of that industry in terms of, don't get me wrong, there are some people that do it for different reasons. I was just there to collect a wage.
Yeah.
But there's people, I think everyone thinks when you say the word bailiff, they think of like single mum at home being intimidated by somebody coming to force money out of them.
Yeah.
The simple truth of the matter is a lot of single mums are in the benefit systems. They don't actually owe the things that we were collecting.
Right.
The best way I can describe it, it was like separating can't pays from won't pays. If somebody can't pay, they can't pay. You can't get blood out of a stone. And because it was working for local authorities, it was just a case then of like writing a report and going, yeah, this person's essentially on their arse.
Yeah.
They can't afford to pay it. And what a lot of local authorities wouldn't want you to know is they get written off. So they write off hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of debt every year.
Yeah.
Just because people can't afford it. But the interesting thing is within 3 months of doing that job, I was qualified and I was out then earning decent money. Within 6 months of doing that job, I went back to the bank with my pay slips and they offered me, I think 150 when I only wanted 130.
Nice.
Which the irony behind that is actually the base rate for that job is peanuts. So it was all commission based, which is another thing that a lot of them wouldn't want you to know. But it is commission based, so you got paid based on the fees that you collected.
Right, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So to earn decent money, you had to have the results. Or I mean, this is This is over 10 years ago, so it might change now to caveat that. But when I did it, that was how it was.
Yeah.
So went back and did that job essentially to buy a house, which I did. which I bought my house when I was about 24, I think.
No way, fair play. Just want to say at this point, for anyone listening without the video, if you can hear the tap, tap, tapping, it's the dog's paws on the floor.
The main character.
The main character's paws on the floor because she's been asleep and now she's awake. So with that then, with the bailiff side of things, because I know you've had like some quite extreme violence actually.
There was all sorts. I mean, so I intended to do the job for a year because I thought I'll go in, get the paperwork that I needed to get my mortgage and I'd be sweet then. Ended up doing it for 4 years. Complete honesty, because the money was good and I got hooked on the money.
Yeah.
But yeah, during the time that I did it, there was some pretty extreme things. I mean, 4 years of knocking maybe 15 to 20 doors a day. If you look at it in context like that, there wasn't that many times it kicked off. But when it kicked off, it really kicked off. Yeah. So, yeah, I had all sorts. I mean, I got ran over twice doing the job. I got attacked with pretty much everything that you could name. I had a bloke come at me with an axe. I got attacked with a bar. Had petrol poured on me once. All sorts of...
It's extreme, isn't it?
Madness, yeah.
Do you ever watch Can't Pay, I Will Take It Away?
Yeah.
My dad loves that, you know.
I watched it and it's probably the most mild version of what the job actually was like.
Yeah.
Fair.
My dad he watches it that much that he could tell you, because if they do a Birmingham episode, he can go, oh, Trescott Road,
That's that road.
Yeah, he'll know.
Well, the thing was, we, so as you can imagine, you weren't encouraged to work in your own area. So I didn't do a lot of local work. We would travel all across the country. So we would work for local authorities all across the country. So you name it, like I've worked in London, I've worked in Manchester, I've worked in Liverpool, we did do little bits in Birmingham, but I always tried to avoid it for obvious reasons. And it's, with that job, if someone's going to kick off, they kick off while you're there. But at the same time, you don't want to do that job and then be in Tesco on the evening and bump into that person.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's just aggro you don't need.
Yeah, it's like when I worked in the police. Like,
yeah, exactly that, yeah.
But I did actually work on my area that I lived.
Oh, did you?
I didn't really have that much trouble, you know. No, I didn't. Occasionally, I think I had one person say to me at one stage, I've seen you round Northwood with your kids. And that was probably one person.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't really have that much. Luckily, didn't have that much of an issue.
If it was me on my own, I wouldn't be bothered. But I wouldn't want to be out with the kids anywhere and have somebody kicking.
No,
off.
of course not.
I mean, the way that I used to handle the job, I was very matter of fact about it. Anyway, there were people that dealt with things very differently. There were two main types of people that did the job. Essentially, there were the lads that were heavy. Yeah. Or the way that I approached it, I learned chapter and verse about the law, the legislation, the rules, and that was the angle I went in. Yeah. It was like, information, I'm here to do a job. This, these are the reasons I can do my job, and took it from there. But it was one of those, it's a job, I don't regret doing it. I'd never do it again. But it's another thing. It's like another little tick on the experience list.
Because one thing I've noticed, and obviously we've not known each other that long, but from speaking to you, coming onto your podcast, one thing I've noticed about you, you're very knowledgeable. And when you said just earlier about having sort of checked out academically and going into like the trades and stuff, you've obviously done a lot of learning since leaving school and working. Yeah. I can tell from speaking to you, you retain a lot of knowledge that you do. It's like you say, you've gone into being a bailiff and then you've learnt chapter and verse about the law and that side of things. See, I'm not like that.
Knowledge is power, Hayley.
Yeah, I know, it is. It's just that I'm not. See, I'm one of these people that I learn by doing. Yeah. So you put books or anything, online learning, anything like that in front of me, I can't cope.
Really?
I can't take it in. So show me once and I've got it. Tell me 100 times and it ain't going in. It's not. I need to physically do it.
People have different learning modalities.
Yeah,
that's one of the main gripes I've got with the education system.
Yeah,
If somebody is like that and they don't learn through books and things, they will never learn that way. So you can't just keep banging that hammer and expecting it to have a different result.
And we talked about the education system, didn't we, on your podcast? We talked a lot about it.
I could do a whole podcast on that, to be fair, because I've got a lot of gripes around education and the way that kids are pigeonholed. There's one path that they're allowed to go down. Yeah. About to have like set destruction.
Yeah, sorry, Carl. She's just going behind there. Just don't want her to knock anything over. Come on, get out.
That's what makes the podcast.
Yeah. Today's episode is sponsored by DNA Boxing School of Excellence, situated on Maryvale Road in Birmingham and delivering fitness for the whole family. Big up to Danger and the team there for the amazing work they're doing in the community. For more information, check out the description below for their contact details. This episode is sponsored by Southport Building and Property Services. Julian and the team have over 20 years of experience and offer an extensive range of building services. Check out the description below for all of their information. Right, so how then did we go from... I don't want to miss any big chunks out, but I want to know how you got into the podcast yourself.
Right, yeah. So obviously the Talking Tradesman podcast, which is what I've been doing for over the last year. So we fast forward a chunk there, but so I went from obviously with the bailiff, and I did that for 4 years, and I got to the stage there where I'd probably, like they say, a cat has 9 lives. I'd had too many close calls, and it got to the point where I did start thinking, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like the money, obviously it was money orientated, but you can't spend it if you're dead.
Yeah.
Like I said, a few calls, it was getting closer and closer. So I thought, yeah, I've rode my luck here. And I went back into the trade. So I guess the podcast journey is that's a 10-year journey in itself for me. So that started because my podcast, as you know, revolves around like mental health, and in particular raising mental health in construction. Mental health being one of those things where the podcast revolves around me actually being aware of it.
Yeah.
And what I would say is when I got to 30 years old, so I'd gone back into the construction industry, I'd gone back into running my own business, picked up where I left off, to be honest. And that's another good thing. Like if you learn a trade, you got trade for life. Because I remember getting to the stage with a bailiff job where I thought, I'm done. And it took me a couple of weeks to pick up 3 months worth of work and then jump straight back into the trade.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was back working as a decorator, business going as normal. And then, so in my private life, it's probably worth mentioning, I met and married quite young. So my ex-wife I met when I was 21. We got married at 22, had my son at 22. So it was all quite young. And we got to the stage where it wasn't working. So that relationship broke down. And that, up until that, at 30 years old, if you would have said to me, Russ, what's your opinion, or what do you think about mental health? My response would be like, ain't got it, mate.
Right.
You know what I'm completely ignorant to it. I would have been, and one of the biggest misconceptions around mental health is people, when you say the words mental health, people immediately think mental illness. They don't separate the difference. Now, to expand on that, like mental health is exactly the same as physical health.
Yeah.
Everyone has it.
Yeah.
It can be good or it can be bad. And much the same as physical health. If your mental health is good, you don't tend to notice it.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is like, you don't wake up in the morning and think, oh, I've got a left arm.
Yeah.
But if you broke it, you would.
Yeah.
You'd wake up and think, shit, my arm's broke.
Yeah.
So it's mental health. I was so unaware of it because, and that's why, to be honest, my childhood's got that relevance, because I went through a lot of abandonment, adversity as a kid, and that tuned me in to sort of suppress my own emotions. Nobody ever talked to me about it. Like, say, when my mum and dad split up, nobody ever turned around to me and went, how are you feeling? Like, how do you feel about this? It was just that, like, stiff upper lip, get on with it.
Yeah.
You'd be all right, just get on with it. And that was how I lived my life up until the age where I hit 30. And as I say, relationship broke down, and went through what a lot of people go through, went through a divorce.
Yeah.
Which turned into, the only difference with mine was that my ex-partner was from a different part of the country.
Oh,
so
yes.
within a few days of us splitting up, she moved back to where she was from, and the kids went with her. So what entailed then was like 2 years or 2.5 years of court appearances, court battles, legal battles, and all that kind of thing, which, as you can imagine, carries a stress.
Yeah, I've been there, mate, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I was typical bloke, bottled it, didn't say anything. And the relevance of this is, by the time I got to Probably about maybe a year or so after I'd split up with my ex, I'd actually met my new partner by this time. So we were early in our relationship, and she noticed in me. She was like, and it was around typical things. It was like, there's a court hearing coming up or whatever. She'd be like, you feeling anxious? I'm like, no, I'm fine. What's that? Like, I was just completely ignorant to anything like that.
But
Like,
she was picking up on
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
behaviours at
She
that
was
point.
picking up. And it was, to be honest, Hayley, it was stuff like, my phone would ring and immediately I'd be like, my heart rate goes through the roof because I'm like,
What's this now?
it's either going to be
Yeah.
aggro off what
Yeah.
was going on,
Yeah,
or it's
yeah.
going to be a solicitor, or it's going to be something that's going to set me off. So I
Yeah.
got to that point, but I wasn't talking about it. I was just completely bottling it up. And my wife, as she is now, as she was like my girlfriend at the time, she said to me, she was like, you're struggling with anxiety. I was like, no, I'm not, I'm fine. And if I'm honest, I'd probably had a couple of borderline panic attacks as well around, again, like things like court hearings and, you're going through all that. I'd done the usual stuff, like I'd broke my hand because I'd punched the wall, all these kind of things. I'm still trying to run my business. I'm dealing with what I felt as the loss of my children. So I've always been like a really involved dad. Like, my kids are my world.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to be a major part of their life. And I think one of the things we don't really talk about a lot as men is when relationships break down with your partner, your ex-partner, you have to quickly become like accustomed to immediately, and regardless of whose fault it was for the breakdown, because it was my decision to end the relationship, all of a sudden I've gone from full-time dad to part-time dad. But I didn't want to be a part-time dad.
No.
I wanted to be a full-time dad, but I'd got the commitments of work and money and all that. So I didn't have the option to give up work and be a full-time dad, but I never wanted to be a part-time dad. But the two, being a husband and being a father, are like intrinsically tied together in a lot of cases. But it's like, just because you don't want the one anymore, why do you have to lose the other?
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit on the domestic violence episode last week, and sort of that's a lot of the reason why people stay in relationships
100%.
they're not happy in.
Yeah.
Because of the children and not wanting that to happen.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I said to you before, I won't go into like the circumstances of my breakdown, just out of respect for the other people involved, because as with any story, there's like
two sides.
three.
Yeah.
There's mine, hers, and the truth in the middle.
Yeah.
So we've got very varying sort of accounts of things. But the reality of that is that, as I say, I'd gone through definitely a period of time where it probably had gone on longer than it would have if it wasn't for the kids being there. But for fear of what actually happened, I stayed where I was, which then meant that the relationship went down. It's just that spiral,
of course. And I think as well for you, like you were just saying, you wanted to be a full-time dad. But I think the distance as well, because they moved so far away, that must have had an impact on your mental health, because
massively,
you couldn't just nip out and see them. They were a couple of hours away, weren't they?
Yeah, over 2.5 hours away. So all the control was gone, and then I'm going through stuff like, say, like court hearings to sort out the arrangements. And as I say, like coming back to where I was at, I did get to the stage where I was probably a couple of borderline panic attacks, anxiety. But because I didn't know what it was, I had no idea how to deal with it. My wife pointed it out to me because she's been through her own stuff, and she was like, you're struggling with this. I pushed back on it, to be honest. I was like, no, I'm absolutely fine. I'm definitely not suffering with that, blah, blah, blah. And as you do, she kind of like planted a seed. I had to go away, think about it while I was at work and be like, oh, actually, maybe there are a few things going on. And like times of stress, the weird thing is when you talk about stress, I think if I were to say to you, like, stress can cause heart attacks, stress can cause high blood pressure, you wouldn't argue with me because it's well-known fact.
Yes.
It's weird when you try and do the opposite and you try and say, well, like, good mental health can have positive benefits. You're then called a hippie. But we so went through all this kind of thing where I'm struggling. Didn't know I was struggling, wouldn't admit I was struggling. But where I sort of tuned into it was I began to focus on the physical manifestation of my stress and poor mental health. So stuff like not being able to sleep, having bad skin, having a bad stomach. Like I got to the stage where I was that stressed where I would get a phone call and I would have an upset stomach through it. Yeah. And this is all like physical reaction.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, that's physical reaction to what's going on in here.
And it can manifest itself in so many different ways, can't it? I mean, like you say, upset stomach, psoriasis,
Yeah.
hair loss,
Yeah.
poor sleep. It's all symptoms of stress.
And what is stress?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I know, I feel it every day, mate.
Stress is your thoughts, isn't it?
Yes, I see
what
what
I'm
you're
saying
saying,
is literally like what you're thinking.
It's
can
in your head.
control what's
What
going
actually
on.
comes out, yeah.
So I became fascinated with that. So I was like, this is kind of, once I'd admitted to myself that actually there's something going on here.
Yeah.
Is that my phone going off? by
Is
the
it your
way?
phone? There is a phone
There
constantly
is,
going.
yeah. I thought I'd silenced it. If not,
Have you got more than one?
yeah, there's
Yeah.
two. Do you want me to just whack it on silent, mate? Or if you want to do it.
Yeah.
Wicked. Sorry about that.
No.
Right, still going. Yeah, do you want to...
Do not disturb.
Sorry, I thought was sure I had put it. Too busy. Million messages. WhatsApp group, Insta groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Where were we?
Stress.
Yeah, so I became fascinated, like I say, with a physical response to stress. So I jumped into education.
Yeah,
I started to, because I thought to myself, well, look, I'm not going to go and get therapy or do anything like that. Is that still going off? Is that still...
I think sometime.
I don't know. It's done it. It's took itself. No, it's on silent.
Yeah.
Sorry
It's all
again. Yeah. So I took myself into education. So I started to learn. I started to study psychology.
Yeah.
Evolutional psychology, Buddhism, philosophy. I just went down this mad rabbit hole because I kind of thought to myself, if I can educate myself around what's going on, then I can get control of it. So initially it was like self-therapy through education, which it worked, to be fair.
Yeah.
Once I got to grips of why and how, I could then rationalise it because I'm quite a rational person.
Right.
I've got to understand the science behind something. And the problem, I think, with mental health is it's got this just title that's out there and you don't really understand what it is. You can't put your hands on it. You can't put your hands on mental health and go, oh, that's how it works.
Yeah.
So once I'd educated myself, and we are getting into why I started the podcast here, going off on a bit of a tangent, but because I'm in the building trades and have been all my life, I'm 40 now. And as I say, I took over the business at 17, but I started going to work with my dad at 8.
Yeah.
So aches, pains, and all that kind of thing. I started to think to myself, I'm going to get to an age here where I don't want to be doing this. I can't be physically on the tools. I need a plan B. So what I lent into was, well, what can I do that's a plan B that's not construction?
Yeah.
What do I enjoy? And I'd got this real passion for psychology at the time because of everything I'd gone through. Now, my personal life, the background, that all kind of played itself out and settled down, but I kept hold of that fascination around psychology.
Yeah.
So I started doing a BSc honours degree in psychology, started studying through OU because I thought, initially what I thought is I'd like to get into counselling and therapy because the human mind fascinates me. So I'll do a psychology degree.
Yeah.
Turns out it's nothing to do with counselling. But the education was great.
Yeah, yeah.
As it turns out, with psychology and counselling and therapy, the two don't really lead into each other. If you want to be a counsellor, you have to qualify as a counsellor. Psychology degree gets you nowhere.
Right.
I got halfway through the degree before I worked that out. But what I did was I thought to myself, I want to get into counselling and therapy and look at helping people. I don't really know how that's going to affect me. How's that going to... What I've always been cautious of is I don't want to do a job that I'm going to take home. So I don't want to, say, go and do counselling and sit down, talk to somebody that's going to tell me some moving or emotional story that I'm going to take home and it's going to ruin my evening.
Yeah.
So I thought I need to expose myself to something to find out how I fit into this. So what I did is I applied for, got accepted, trained and volunteered for Samaritans for 18 months.
Yes, you did, yeah.
Yeah, to get that experience of speaking to people that were in crisis and that kind of things. Incredible experience. I've got massive love for the organisation and what they do. What they do is legitimately incredible. It's life-changing. They save lives daily.
Yeah.
So.
Did you take any of that home?
No.
So you were able to switch that. So if you're listening to someone in crisis on the phone, if she stinks, in your role as Samaritan, working for the Samaritans, and then your, let's call it a shift, ends and go home, would any of that stay with you?
No, And that's just me being honest.
Yeah.
What I would say is the training they give you is great, and that they do. So at the end of a shift, you have to do what they call offloading. So
Right.
you'll have a shift leader who you have to speak to, and essentially you unpack everything that you've listened to, heard, and you'll say to them like if something's bothered you or not. But the training's great, prepares you for it. It's not for everyone.
No.
But I think what I've deducted looking back at myself is the same thing that made me able to do the bailiff job and switch off and go home
Yeah.
is the same thing that means I can do that.
Yeah, and it is a skill, isn't it, to be able to desensitise yourself to certain things.
Yeah, yeah.
We talked about it on your podcast, how I took a lot of stuff home with me in the early days,
Of course,
the
yeah,
earlier
with what
years.
you did as a job. I mean,
Yeah,
you have to, don't you?
Yeah, I've had a lot of therapy over the years as well, but there's come a point. Well, I'm very desensitised to a lot now. I can switch off, and actually, almost. This is going to sound quite heartless, but like, say, I've not had any relationships for a couple of years, but I kind of feel like, when you start seeing someone or you like someone or there's a connection with someone, if that gets to a point where it's not going anywhere, I can very, very easily detach.
Yeah.
But I just have to. This sounds really heartless, but I can pretend that person doesn't exist, and just detach.
I'm the same.
So I don't know if that's coming from a place of protecting my own heart, probably. Just where desensitising myself to all sorts of things, having worked for the police for 20 years, is protecting my head.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I can switch off. We spoke about it on the recent episode with you about my friend who left the police, and a particular job that we worked on really affected him. And it was at the point where I was like, fuck, this is not affecting me at all. And the particular case that we were working on was someone that had been dismembered, found in probably about 9 or 10 parts a couple of weeks after she went missing. And it was a real, obviously serious murder case. And he'd said to me, I'm thinking about this when I'm going home. And I questioned myself and thought, I'm not. As soon as I've left, I've clocked out and I ain't thought about it.
To be honest with you, though, to do that job, you need to not be thinking about it when
you
go
do.
home.
But the good thing that you were just touching on there about with the Samaritans in, what did you call it, offloading or unpacking?
Offloading, unpacking.
Unpacking.
Thing,
We should have been doing that.
Yeah, definitely.
And we weren't. And I don't know if anything's changed in the organisation since, but there was none of that going on.
I must admit, though, I don't think, like, even when I was doing the Samaritans calls at times, because the shift patterns, they used to have lates that used to end at, like, midnight or 1 a.m. And I remember I'd get those shifts over with, and you're meant to, like, ring your shift leader and unpack, and a lot of the time, be like, I can't be asked to do this. And, I just want to go home. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And I don't think I actually personally needed to unpack or offload, but it was part of their process, so they're obviously following due course. But, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's like, are you too numb, or is it actually a skill?
I think it develops into a skill, and I think I've developed it into a skill now. And the work I'm doing these days, it can be very, very sensitive and very, very real hard hitting, to the point where I am actually really looked after from a mental health perspective now. And I've worked on some jobs in the last couple of years where the organisation has said to me, do you need referring? Do you need, diffusing or anything? And I've actually said, you're talking to the wrong person.
Yeah.
As soon as I've stopped working or whatever, logged off that day, it's done. I'm fine.
I mean, I think if you think about things with a rational mind and you do detach your emotions and you think, well, there's nothing actually that I can do. And it was like that with doing the Samaritans shifts. There were some very traumatic calls that you take, but ultimately there's nothing you can do other than be there for somebody to listen.
Yeah, because you're not allowed to advise, are you?
Nah.
It's just listening ears.
And do you know what? That was probably the hardest thing to get my head around. Because when I signed up to do it, what most people would think is, oh, I'm going to volunteer at Samaritans, I'm going to help people, which you do. But most people's version of help is somebody's going to ring up and you're going to go, right, okay, tell me what's wrong. Okay, that's that. So what you want to do is this. Well, why don't you try this?
Yeah.
Complete opposite.
Yeah.
It's a listening service. And I'm trying to think of the terminology, because the most extreme example of that is it self-determination they refer to it? I might have got that wrong, but there's essentially a policy within Samaritans that even if somebody rings up at full point of crisis and is talking about taking their own life, you're not allowed to say don't do that.
Yes, you told me about this. Explain it again, because it's really interesting for the
I'm
listeners
sure it's
and
what
the
they
viewers.
refer to as self-determination. So there's one thing where if somebody has made their mind up to do that,
Yeah.
you're not allowed to try and talk them out of it. But the best example I can give you of potentially why you're not allowed to give advice is this. Say somebody rings up the service and they go, look, I've just got home, I've walked in, my wife's cheating on me and I've found out, I'm going to take my own life.
Yeah.
And you say, don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, you talk them down, and they then respond by going home and murdering the wife and the, you
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
It's that then accountability as to, have you instigated that?
A causal link between your
exactly.
advice and what's happened. Yeah.
So you're not allowed to tell people what to do, and that's part of it. But the sort of extreme version of that is if somebody rings up to take their own life and is absolutely committed to that course of action, you're not allowed to talk them out of it. And there are I never had this myself, but there are people that do have to take calls where literally people have decided that's what they're going to do, and they just want somebody to talk to while they do it. Like, I don't know, they might have taken, say, an overdose, and they're like, look, I've done this, just don't want to be on my own. And there are people that have had to manage those phone calls, which I can imagine to be
It's
horrific.
hard, isn't it? But talking about hard phone calls, I know, and I'd hope you can talk about this. You'd said to me a couple of weeks ago about some calls that you've had to listen to that you don't want to listen to, like people like sex offenders, and they want to fantasize about what they've done, and they're calling the Samaritans, or because they know you can't really say anything, you just got to sit and listen, and they're offloading their fantasies.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I'll be honest with this, Hayley, because, you know, I'm kind of like an open book. So, yeah, when you are meant to listen to anyone that calls. And the thing is with Samaritan Service, another great thing they do, they have dedicated Samaritans lines in the prisons, because, again, it's another place with high instances of people taking their own life. Some of it is really genuine. I had some really good phone calls with prisoners that were legit, you know, very, very meaningful conversations. And then you'd have people abuse the service. But then you'd also have, people that would say, like say, sex offenders, people that would want to ring up and talk about what they'd done, you know.
And not to clear their conscience.
No, it was a tricky one. There was like a thin line between, there were people that would ring up for like gratification through doing it. You could end that call. But if somebody wanted to ring and talk about what they'd done in a, like, I can't believe I've done this, I'm now feeling this particular way.
Yeah.
You were meant to hear that out.
You were. Yeah. And listen, I'm not like, I think I'd struggle with these calls. And I'm glad that you just said that you were allowed to terminate the ones that were getting gratification from it, because that ain't on.
Oh, Hayley, there's a massive proportion. I mean, I didn't experience it because I'm a bloke, but the female volunteers at the service, there's a massive proportion of misuse of service.
Is there?
So they get like sex calls, people like ringing up, and the usual like, so what are you wearing kind of conversations.
God, that's a bit old school, ain't it?
Wrong. Yeah.
I mean, like, God, we're in 2025 and people are still doing that.
Yeah. There was loads of misuse of service. I mean, I used to take those calls, not that angle of it, but you'd get people that would ring up and want to complain about the football result and all sorts of madness.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. So, okay, like, you know, you've experienced, because that is some good experience there, isn't it, of listening to people's trauma and listening, not advising, just listening. Because we say, we said a few weeks ago, how many times do we say, "You're right, mate"?
Yeah.
Yeah, you. But are you really asking them, "Are you all right, mate?" Or is it just a passing comment? Have we even got time to stop and listen?
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is, I think in our society, we've replaced hello with "you all right."
Yeah.
And we don't really mean "are you all right?" because the reality is, like you said, I might see you in the shop, I might see you in Tesco's or wherever, you know. For me, actually, Aldi, to be fair, I can't shop in Tesco's, too expensive, man. But I might see you in a supermarket in passing and be like, "You're right," but I haven't actually got time. If you're not all right, I haven't actually got time to hear it, or potentially I don't want to hear it. I'm not
in that
I might
place.
be going through my own stuff. So that's one of the issues, I think, is that we've replaced hello with "how are you," when we don't really mean "how are you."
Yeah.
So yeah, why did we get onto that, Hayley?
I think listening, just saying, you know,
Listening,
have we got time to listen? So if we say, "You're
Yeah.
right, mate,"
Do you know
well,
what?
actually, no, I'm not fucking
It's
all right.
it's the one thing, and I'll get to why I brought up the Samaritans thing. I got two main takeaways from my time at Samaritans, and that was the big one. It was because you weren't allowed to give advice, was the power of listening. In that, you literally, all you had to do doing that was to listen to somebody. So they would ring up in crisis a lot of the time, unpack their thoughts, and by the end of a phone call, that might be 10 minutes, might be 20 minutes, might be an hour, you get off the phone to a different person and you've done nothing. And they'll end the call and go, "Thank you so much, you've really helped."
But you haven't done anything,
I've
you've just
listened
listened,
to
yeah.
you.
And sometimes that's all people need, isn't it? Just someone to listen.
Yeah.
Because I noticed you've got it on your top there.
Yeah.
Is that one of your brands, is
It
it?
is,
Yeah, because I know that you have Let's Talk, Let's Listen, and obviously your other,
So yeah,
this one
the
says
stuff
Let's
that
Talk.
the stuff you're sporting is one of our brand merch sponsors, the Funky Peach. That's for my guests to take away as a thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
This stuff here, this is one of my hoodies. So I've got my own clothing range, which is split at the minute. We've got a new one coming out. Between Let's Talk and Let's Listen. And the reason for that, I'll get to this, but it's because a lot of what I've done, a lot of the experience, I've come to realise that equally as important as talking is having people to listen.
Yeah.
Because if nobody's listening, nobody's talking.
Yeah.
You know.
And especially in the industries that, you know, in the construction industries. I mean, tell me the stats again. The suicide rates with the construction industry are really high, aren't they?
This started at Samaritans, Hayley,
Yeah.
to be fair, because when I was there, I was taking calls for about 18 months, and I just started to realise, because I think because I'm in construction myself, I could kind of pick it out.
Yeah.
So you start talking to somebody, and part of the conversation usually went to, you know, okay, so you're struggling with this at the moment, how's work? And then you'd get there, work, I'm a builder, or I'm a scaffolder, or I'm a brickie, I'm a this. And I started thinking, I'm speaking to a lot of blokes in the trades. And I was in the office one day, in the Samaritans office where you take the calls, and I just thought, there's a lot of tradespeople. I'm going to have a little look into the stats here. And the first thing I'd say is it's really hard to find the statistics around, like, suicide in general. It's that taboo. It's very hard to find. But once I'd actually dug into it and looked into the statistics around men in construction, and particularly like mental health crisis or people taking their own lives, it was just shocking. So the construction industry, I'll hit you with the stats now. The construction industry is the worst industry in the UK by demographic for male suicide.
Yeah.
If you're a man in construction, you're 4 times more likely than other industries to take your own life.
How mad is that?
It is.
But there's a really understandable reason now, which you can tell us about, as to why that is, because there's a lot of lone working.
There's loads of reasons.
The finishing trades is one, isn't it? So is that, go on, you told me.
Decorators and plasterers, 2 worst affected trades.
Yeah, because they're generally the finishing.
More likely to be on their own,
Yeah.
So, I mean, the thing is, in the UK, suicides are 75% men anyway. So you're 3 times more likely as a bloke to take your own life.
Yeah.
And then if you add into that men in construction, then 4 times more likely on top of that. So the stats at the minute say there's roughly 2 people on average per day, 2 construction workers a day taking their own life.
In the UK?
In the UK. And
that's
just
loads.
The UK. 700 a year.
That's a lot.
7,000 over the last decade, yeah.
2 a day?
2 a day. 2 families a day. And you imagine, the problem is, when it comes to people that take their own life, it's not just the individual, it's the ripple.
Yeah.
So you've got everyone affected by that. You've got the immediate family, you've got the partners, the kids, but then you've got the friends, the work colleagues, you've got that butterfly effect, like the stone in the water, the ripple goes out.
Yeah.
And that's 2 a day at the moment. So it's the worst industry in the UK. There's loads of reasons for that. I mean, I've sat down, this was why, rolling into, the realisation of this led me to the point where I sat down and went, well, I've got all this education now around psychology. I have got the experience from volunteering at Samaritans. What can I do? What can I actually do to help what my industry is going through? And that was where the idea was, maybe I could start a podcast and just get people talking. Get people talking about what the issue is and raise awareness and let blokes know it's okay to talk. You know, it's a male trait that we hold things in a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And in construction, You got a lot of alpha male types, a lot of big rowdy geezers that
Yeah.
they don't want to, you know, even if they've got a good close circle of mates, they're probably not going to open up to them.
No.
And it's trying to break that down.
Yeah.
Is what I've been trying to do through setting the podcast up and normalising mental health and
Yeah.
normalising people struggling, and not just struggling but talking about it.
Because I think everybody goes through something at some point in their lives where their
100%.
mental health suffers.
Yeah.
I would actually argue with anyone on this and say, if you've got to an old age without some sort of mental health struggle, I don't even think you could get to an old age without some sort of mental health struggle, because you're going to go through grief.
Yeah.
Or you're going to go through potentially a breakup or something that will affect you.
It's how you frame mental health.
Yeah.
That's the thing, because there's no, like, life is tough. Nobody gets out of it alive.
Yeah.
And what that unfortunately means is that every person on this planet, if you live to 100, you're going to experience bereavements, you're going to experience loss, you're going to experience bad luck, you're going to even to bring it down. Like, the best, I had somebody give me an analogy around mental health, and I thought it was mint. It translated really well. And it was equating it to a bank balance.
Okay.
And so big shout out to Joe if he listens to this. Joe, he's got a business called Second City Screed, local lad actually, gave me this analogy when he came on my podcast. And he said that mental health is like a bank balance. So you wake up in the morning, you've got a zero bank balance.
Yeah.
And everything good that happens to you that day is money in.
Yeah.
And everything bad is cash out.
Right.
He said, so if you get out of bed in the morning and you stub your toe straight away and it's raining, that's cash out. You're in debt.
Yeah.
Right? If you then, I don't know, you go downstairs and your partner's made your breakfast and you get a bit of good news, or you turn up at the job and the customer's really like, oh, you know, gives you a few compliments, that's paying in.
Yeah.
And where you are at the end of the day is where your mental health stands. If you've had a good day or a bad day, that's mental health. You know, anything, happiness, emotions is mental health.
Yeah.
So nobody gets through life without experiencing mental health. It's just, there's that stigma around talking about it, where people assume that if you talk about mental health, you're talking about mental illness.
Yeah.
And it means that you're either weak or that you're going to, you know, be carted off by the men in a van to go and sit in a padded cell.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
You know, and that stigma around talking about it is what stops people talking about it. So it stops the people that need to reach out and say, I'm struggling right now because I'm going through this. And that's perfectly normal.
Yeah.
But it stops people doing it.
Yeah. So how are you finding podcasting?
It's a whirlwind, mate, isn't it? It's a whirlwind. So I started the Talking Tradesman podcast just over a year ago now. And to be honest with you, there's a bit of a funny story how it got started, because I'd never have started it if it wasn't for my wife.
Okay.
So I went home one day. I don't know, I'll probably come off a shift, to be honest, at Samaritans. Sat there talking about, you know, what can I do? What can I do to actually help what's going on in the industry? And it was just an offhand comment that I said to her. I went, you know what, maybe I could do a podcast or something and get people talking. And her response to that initially was, yeah, you should do that. You'd be great at that. You love the sound of your own voice.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you can agree with that, Hayley, but...
Well, the thing is, we like talking, don't we?
Talking.
But it's our therapy.
Yeah.
So
she said that, and I'm like, right, okay. And then me being me, a million things on the go, just forgot it.
Yeah.
So like 2 days later, she texts me and she goes, you free on Tuesday next week? So no, I'm working. Why? She went, we're going to see some office space. I went, what office space for what? And I'm thinking, I don't need office space. You don't need office space. Why are we doing that?
Yeah.
She went, for the podcast. I was like, what podcast? So she went, the podcast that we talked about, we're going to do this. So I was like, right, yeah, okay. I was like, well, look, I can't do Tuesday. You go and have a look at it. Send me some pictures of the space and we'll take it from there.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, inside I'm thinking, give me a few days to talk her out of it. Hopefully she'll forget. Like,
yeah.
You know, we'll leave it there. So fast forward, I'm at work, I'm busy, I forget all about it. We get to the Tuesday evening, I go home, I sit down, and it was probably about 8 o'clock at night, and I realised, sort of looked at her, I went, weren't you going to go and look at that office today? Like, I take it was no good because I haven't heard anything from you.
Yeah.
And she went, oh, no, I didn't need to send you the pictures. I've signed a 12-month lease. So I was like, you've what? That was how it came about.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So then it was, when can you do the refurb? Because it needs a load of work doing right before Christmas. So I then had to squeeze that in. I mean, obviously, I'm massively thankful that she did it now.
Yeah, of course.
But I'd never have done it if it weren't for her pushing me. Because in our relationship, like, I'm a massive overthinker. I'll think of an idea and then I'll think of 5 reasons why I shouldn't do it.
Oh, I'm the
Whereas
opposite.
she's just like, go, go, go.
Yeah, I'm like that. Is it Angie? Yeah. Big up Angie then for doing that.
Shout out, Angie.
Yeah. So I'm the opposite to that. I act and think after.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, she's the same.
Yeah.
But I think that's obviously what works with us.
Yeah.
I'll sort of think my way out of it. So, yeah, it started off, we had a little office space, which was, pretty low commitment, if I'm honest. It was very cheap because I had to do it up. It was a bit of a state.
Yeah.
And the response to the podcast just been massive.
Yeah,
so
it has, hasn't it?
It's really took off. I've had over 70 guests on now. And in November of last year, so less than a year into starting the podcast, we moved into a high street studio, which obviously you've been down to.
Which absolutely mint.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. So really, really grown, good space.
Which, again, was another gamble because it's then taken on more of a financial commitment. But in reality, the construction industry that I'm in, there's a lot of money involved and there's a lot of people struggling. So it's time for the people behind it, the people that are really profiting from it, to step up and help the people involved, which fortunately is what I'm kind of seeing happening now. So we've got sponsors on board that are construction industry brands that want to support what we're doing and look after the people in the industry, because I'll be honest with you, nobody else is going to do it.
No.
On a governmental level, they don't care.
And that's really good, actually, that there are people within the industry that are sponsoring the podcast and helping, to get the brand out there and talk and listen. Do you know what I mean? And I mean, it's fantastic. I've listened to quite a few.
I appreciate that.
And my favourite was Tyler the Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler's a character.
A really funny story. Well, not a funny story, quite a serious story. But
story. It was like the Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels.
Yeah. So, because it's hard work, isn't it, podcasting?
It's a lot of time. It's a passion project.
Yeah.
It really is. It's not easy. There's a lot more to it. I said this before we started recording.
People think you're just sitting and yapping.
If I knew the amount that was involved before I started it, I'd probably never have started it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a whirlwind. I'd like to think I'm just getting started with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a mad one. I mean, how are you finding it?
Same, like you said, it's hard work. It's not just sitting and talking. I'm lucky because I've got Carl, whereas you do all the editing and everything yourself. Yeah. But as we were saying before, you need a car. Everyone needs a car. But like we were saying earlier, you're in a little bit of a different position with me in that your kids are older and less needy, because like your lad's 18, so he's an adult now, things like that. So I feel like my boys are still, like, obviously they live with me, and although they spend time with the dad, I teach spin, don't I? So I'm on the bike 7 times a week. So B31 spin is my other side. I've got a day job, then I teach the spin, and then I do the podcast. Yeah. So I feel like I'm spinning too many plates at the minute. But like we were talking about outside, it's not, a lot of people say to me, oh, Hayley, you're doing too much or you're going to burn out. Unhelpful. Either support me, I get it, I know I'm doing too much, I'm knackered, or like help me out somehow. Like a friend of mine has just taken on some admin for me because things like running socials and sending messages and emails and maybe coming up with sponsorship packages and things like that is something that I don't have time to do.
Yeah, it's this bit.
It's easy.
Is the good bit. And it's everything before that. It's that, I mean, I've loved the journey. I'm glad that I've done everything because I kind of feel like I understand everything probably to a small degree. Yeah. I mean, like, obviously, your man Carl there's a professional. He knows exactly what he's doing. I know a little bit about everything. It's an industry that's growing. But at the same time, don't you find there's no set standard for podcasting? Like, they're all so different.
Everyone's different. Yeah. Everyone does things in their own way,
which is cool.
Yeah. I've got my own sort of structure of how I like to do things. I have a lot of people contact me and sort of like on how to source the guests. Sometimes I approach people. Sometimes people approach me. Sometimes I have ideas or a theme I want to run with. Sometimes it's very much off the cuff. There's no real rhyme or reason to me in general anyway. But I think that's just, it works for me. I don't want to be, I don't want to stick to one particular topic because I'm passionate about a lot of stuff. Yeah. So I want to feed into all those passions. But it is hard work and it's very, very exhausting. And I've had to dig deep. in my own mental health.
Do you know what though? Sometimes to build something exceptional, it needs an exceptional effort.
Yeah.
Shit don't come easy.
It doesn't come easy at all.
It's as simple as that. Like if you want something, you got to put everything in.
Yeah, and
to
I'm
make it
definitely
work.
doing it like you are. But some days I'm tired. Some days I'm not in the mood. Some days I don't want to talk, let alone listen.
But that's what defines you.
Yeah.
Those days, the day that you don't want to do it and you go do it anyway.
Yeah.
That is where the difference is made.
Yeah, I said to you earlier about someone had approached me recently and said, we're having a media day at a local gym. Do you want to come down? Might be a good chance to source guests for the podcast or sponsors.
Yep.
And it was at a point where, I taught a class in the morning. I'd met my mate for breakfast. I'd taken her out. The boys were with their dad. House still needs cleaning. Food shopping still needs doing. I've then got to get myself ready. And, sometimes I just want to put my hoodie on, go around, get my shopping, come home, clean my house and shut the door and not speak to anybody. But I had to sort of then put my face on, go, step into, it was not something that's within my comfort zone, walking into a bare knuckle boxing gym. I could smell the testosterone from my house. Do you know what I mean? I thought, I'm not comfortable with this, but I'm really glad I went because off the back of it has come potential sponsorships and a couple of episodes. But it's at that point where I did have to dig deep on that day and sort of go, I'm not sure I really want to do this at this moment in time. I'm tired, I'm not in my comfort zone, but I've done it anyway. Yeah. And that's the bit, isn't it?
That's where the growth is. Though.
Yeah. And it is.
Growth is always uncomfortable. Very rarely is growth ever pleasant.
Yeah.
So it's always uncomfortable. It's always those moments, like you say, where you're not really sure whether you should do it, if you're going to do it. I had the same a couple of weeks ago. I went down, as you know, and did some public speaking. First time I've ever, I've never really even imagined that I would do it because I've never thought that I would be qualified in any way or subject to that people would want to listen to me.
Yeah.
But went down to central London and did public speaking for the first time.
Yeah, sorry, look at her. That's it. Get comfy. Thank you. Yeah.
But yeah, it's, again, same thing. I was very much like, do I do this? Should I do this? What's this going to bring me? But took a day off, travelled to London, and I'm so glad I did because I met some incredible people. And I'm very much like now, I kind of just think, do you know what? Life will be what it will be. But you've got to put yourself in the right places for the right opportunities to come up. I mean, I met a load of people on that day. I haven't, there's no ulterior motive.
No, but it's networking, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's getting your brand out there. It's getting people listening to you. It's getting people listening to the stats on the suicide stats within the construction industry because, like we talked about before we pressed record, a lot of that crowd didn't get it. No. But now they do. Well, so it's raising that awareness in a different
one of the things I do want to share with you, because it was a big thing that I've come to learn myself. So I would have been exactly the same as most people, which is somebody that would turn around and go, do you know what? The issue with men, because another stat, right? We'll talk about governmental levels, but so suicide is the biggest killer of men under 50 in the UK. And then construction is the biggest industry within that.
Yeah.
Now, if anything else was killing more men than anything under 50, you've got to think that there'd be governmental intervention, right? And the example I always use, right, if cycling was killing more men under 50 than anything else, I would imagine that there would be things come in, there'd be like licensing, you'd have to take a test, there'd be like, it would be legal, you'd have to legally wear helmets, there would be some action. Yeah. But because it's people taking their own life, it's like it's just swept under the carpet. And the mental health, like the budget from our government towards mental health has been on the decline for years and years and years, decades even. There's a big misconception because people are more aware and talking about mental health than ever that more's being done about it. It's not true at all.
No. Because everyone, well, let's not say everyone, but a lot of people are aware. A lot of people in my world are aware.
I mean, people talking about it.
Yeah.
But not really much being done to help.
Yeah.
But one of the things, what I was getting at was when I started the podcast, I actually thought to myself, I thought maybe I'll do like one episode a month.
You do loads.
Window, mate. I'll do about 3 a week at the minute. Yeah. But I thought I'd do maybe like one a month. But the reason I thought that was because I thought what everyone else thought, which is men don't talk.
Yeah.
And I actually thought it's going to be tough to get guests to come and open up and talk because I'm not going to do it. The opposite's been true.
Yeah.
So out of the 70 guests that I've had, I think I've asked about maybe 3 now to come on.
Everyone else has approached you?
Everybody else has messaged me and gone, look, I've seen what you're doing. I've seen the podcast. I've watched this episode, whatever it might be. I've got a story to tell. Can I come and sit down?
Brilliant.
But what that's shown me, right, it's quite a profound moment, this. But what it's shown me is that it's not that men don't want to talk. It's that a lot of men don't think there's anyone listening.
Right. Okay.
Now they know there's someone listening.
Yeah.
There's a platform where people are listening.
Yeah.
They want to talk.
Yeah, good.
I'm not having to fight people to do it.
Yeah, they're approaching you.
And it's been like a really momentous thing for me where I thought, I got the problem wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was that blokes don't talk. We've got to open men up. No, that a lot of men are willing to.
Yeah.
We just don't think there's anyone listening.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. It's like, you can't walk around all day saying that. Like, you got to talk. You got to talk about it, mate.
Yeah.
There's all this emphasis. I had this conversation only recently, actually, because again, it's like a light bulb moment for me where I'm just having these thoughts. But a lot of when it comes to mental health and helping people with mental health, there's loads of emphasis on the person who's struggling. And what I mean by that is, like, say you're struggling with mental health, you have people that will come up to you and go, well, what you need to do is this. You need to talk, you need to open up, you need to get therapy, you need to, and it's all very much you need to. But if you're struggling and you're in that dark place and you can't see a way out, you're not in a position to take that on.
No.
You
can't see the wood for the trees, can you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't make those changes. And then, unfortunately, that plays out in, terminal actions at times. And people will stand back and go, well, I tried to get them to talk and I tried to get them to do this. But there's no focus on what can we do to help that person that's struggling? Can we educate ourselves? Like, do you know how to listen to someone? Or are you just going to try and give them a solution?
Yeah.
How many people actually know how to listen? In your friendship circle, like, do you actually provide a safe space for your friends to talk if they're struggling?
I'd like to think I do.
I would argue that you're probably in the minority.
Yeah, I'd like to think I do.
It doesn't come from a place of intentional neglect.
Yeah,
I can speak so from experience with me. I went through a divorce. I went through this stress. I went through the court cases, and I've got a good circle of mates. Like, not knocking my friends at all because I've got a lot of love for them. And it comes from, we don't know what to do. I'd be the same. But during that time where I was going through all the stress and tribulations I went through, nobody ever said, do you know what, mate? Do you want to go for a walk and we'll just have a chat about how you're feeling? None of that. What I did get a lot of was, do you know what, mate? Do you want to go for a beer? Like, or I'd be like, oh, this has happened today. I'm really pissed off, or I'm down, or whatever. Come on, mate. We'll go for a beer. Let's forget about it. Mask it. Don't solve it. Mask it. And that's generally like a bloke thing
to do. Yeah.
But in reality, what could actually make a big difference is people learning how to listen.
Yeah.
So putting some emphasis on those around the people struggling rather than the person struggling. It's like, well, what can you do to help that person at that stage? Are you equipped?
Just listen. Just ask them if they want to go out for a walk, a cup of tea,
just a little
whatever.
bit of personal development, and that's a great tip, for anyone that is listening. Is listening is really difficult but really easy at the same time, because our natural reaction, if you tell me something's wrong, is to go, do this, do that, do the other, and I'll tell you what, 9 times out of 10 you don't want to hear it.
No, I know.
You're not even in a place to hear it. You're not going to take that advice on because your head is, spaghettied up. It's so jumbled.
Yeah.
So just listening, what that's allowing somebody to do is just mentally unpack their thoughts.
Yeah.
So putting yourself in a position where you do go, do you know what, mate? I know that you're going through, how many people know people around now that are going through a breakdown or whatever it might be, bad time at work, lost a job, all these kind of things, financial pressures, is just say, do you want to go for a walk?
Yeah.
You don't even have to say,
oh, God, she's...
Go...
Don't say that to her.
W-A-L, can she spell? That was the other thing.
She knows, my her ears pricked up then.
Oh, dear. Right, that's it. That's me locked in for doing that.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
It's like, you don't even have to say to somebody...
God, look at me.
You're covered, then. Is she molting?
Absolutely. Yeah, look at her.
But you don't have to say to someone, let's go talk about what you're struggling with.
Yes.
Because a lot of people then again will go, oh, do you know what, mate? I ain't in the mood for it. I don't want to...
And just being out in nature is a healer, isn't it? Just walking out, listening to the birds, just
go for a coffee.
Yeah, it's just perfect, isn't it? I just want to ask you something quick.
Yeah, no.
You saying about people saying, should we go for a beer? What's your relationship like with alcohol after your dad being a drinker?
Hayley, that's an interesting question. It is. So yeah, obviously I grew up around, if I'm honest, my dad solving his problems at the bottom of a pint glass, which is obviously wasn't great as a kid. You know,
No.
because my dad, in credit to him, there was never any maliciousness. He was never like an aggressive drunk or anything like that.
No.
He was always level, but absent, you know. And there's a part of me that's hyper aware because I could easily go that way. And I felt that myself. Like when I went through my relationship breakdown, there were a few times where I'd finish work and you're in this weird space as a bloke then. You've gone from, I go home and I've got a wife and kids at home to actually now there's nothing at home. I don't want to go home.
Yeah.
So where do I go?
Pub.
I'm going to go to the pub. And it started off like that. And I was like, you know what? I'll go for a couple of beers. And then 2 turned into 3. And then 3 turned into 5. And then it turned into getting a taxi home and leaving the car, or leaving the van, having to go get it in the morning because I've had, 5, 6. And then it went from once a week to 3 times a week. And I was on the slope.
Yeah.
I was on it, but I clocked it.
Thank God.
And thought, oh, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And all I did at the time, I swapped out the pub for the gym.
Yeah.
And, incredible, like, if you're struggling with mental health, just go to the gym.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Go move, go and do something.
It's my medication.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what I did because
I'm also heavily medicated on other stuff. I just want to add.
But I did think to myself, though, exactly that. It's like, oh, hold on. You're starting to head that way. And I do think, I don't know whether it's genetic. I know they say there's a lot of that, like hereditariness when it comes to like drinking and alcoholism.
Yeah.
It passes on. I don't know whether it passes on or whether it's a learnt behaviour trait. I'm not sure. I don't know what the science is behind it to be able to stipulate that. But I know that it's in my family.
Yeah.
So I'm hyper conscious of it.
Yeah.
So my relationship with alcohol now, which was your question, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
I'm fine with it. So I now, if I'm honest, I tend to potentially now and again I'll binge drink at social occasions, but I can take it or leave it. Like,
yeah.
I haven't had a drink now for, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks, just because I haven't really been doing anything to warrant it. I don't really drink at home. Me and my wife don't drink at home. I'll drink when I go out if there's a social occasion, but I'm very much take it. I'm not off alcohol, but I'm very much take it or leave it. And at the moment, I'm probably leaning into the downsides outweigh the negatives because now I'm getting a bit older. My hangovers are like 3 days long.
Yeah, tell me about it. I'm the same. Yeah, I'm getting into 3 months now without drinking. But
well done.
Yeah, I'm doing well with it. I'm not thinking about it as much. But like you said, the exercising and music is the thing that lifts me up. So spin is perfect for me. Teaching spin is perfect because not only am I providing a service to help other people, I'm getting my exercise in as well, and that is just massive for me.
Win-win.
And
and getting paid.
And I'm getting paid for it. Yeah, so it's even better. But and I've got a real big passion for that. So I think that is definitely something that helps me. But
you'll know though, if you go for a drink, I mean, then you don't want to train.
Exactly. And then if I was to have a drink, so perfect example for me is a Wednesday night, my kids stay at the dad's. So I would quite often have a bottle of red wine and then I don't want to get up at 6 o'clock with my alarm because my class on a Thursday morning is 7:15. Not only do I not want to get up, I've probably had a worse sleep because the drink makes you have a worse sleep. And then I'm slower on the bike in the morning.
Do you know what, Hayley? If I'm honest now as well, I don't know whether it's because maybe I don't drink very often, but if I went to the pub tonight, I could have 2 pints, be stone cold sober, and wake up in the morning still feeling hungover.
Really?
Yeah, it just knocks me about now.
Yeah.
Drinking. Like, so it's kind of like if I know I'm going to do it, I'll go all in because I'm like, I know this is going to hurt.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's generally, like I say, so I think the last drink I had was probably we had a opening do at the podcast studio.
Yeah.
Like a belated thing, which was the 1st of Feb, which is probably the last time I had a drink. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So that's nearly a month then.
That would have been the last blowout, yeah.
Yeah. Because for me, I'm 40 this year. So what we know, this is going to come out first week of March-ish. So in 3 months, I'm going to be 40. So as you know, there's obviously lots of plans going on and there's weekends here, there and well, I've got a weekend in Dublin. So how am I going to get through that without drinking?
Dublin's, really, you're going to struggle.
But again, I'm thinking, okay, if I have a drink in Dublin, I've got a weekend away where I haven't got anything to think about. No big deal. I love a Guinness.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And accept it for what it is. Yeah. But then for me, I'm a big drinker in the house.
Okay.
So a lot of people who I would like, they don't drink like me now. I could drink every night in the house,
Mm.
but I don't. But I could.
I think I'm the same, you know. Like I enjoy drinking.
And me.
I enjoy how drink makes me feel. Like I'm the same. I don't get emotional. I don't get angry. I'm a happy drunk.
Yeah, same.
So it's good times for me.
Drunk
So I
Haley's
haven't-
absolutely amazing.
Exactly. I haven't
But-
got the negative like, that every time I get drunk I get into a fight or row.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
not me. But it has started to be that like hangovers just like, yeah. Because I'm so busy, it's like
Slows you down.
yeah, say this weekend coming up, I've got recordings booked in now on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
So if I was tempted to have a drink Saturday, I won't because I don't want to be dull on Sunday. It's not fair I've got a guest travelling up from London. You know, I can't have him travel up from London and then me be like,
Mouldy.
I'm just sat there grunting.
Yeah.
So
It's not fair.
So yeah, I think my lifestyle probably leads me away from it now. But
Yeah.
it's a very valid question because there are people that go the other way
Yeah.
when it comes to being around parents that drink, and it's that like, well, I drink because that was what I was shown. And I've personally, I don't know if I understand that mindset of this bad thing happened to me, therefore I'm going to repeat it. Because I've always been the opposite. I've always been like, I experienced this, so I'm going to make sure I don't pass that on.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Break the cycle.
Yeah, and if I'm honest, actually, you've like talking about this has just sort of twigged on me. I'm never drunk around my kids.
Yeah.
I do like, I will drink around them.
Yeah.
But I'm never drunk around them because in my head I've got a lot of negative memories of being around a drunk parent.
Yeah.
You know, because and there was some real crap times when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that I witnessed and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what we talked about before was just, I said to you in the week, a bit of a fun sort of like quick fire question round to get to know us both as podcast hosts, because a lot of the time we're talking to a guest.
Who's firing the questions then, Hayley?
So-
if it's both of us, is Carl going to be throwing questions?
No,
over here?
I'll
You're
fire
gonna-
the questions,
You're going to answer
but
it yourself as well.
we can answer them both, or you can fire some back. It's up to you.
Okay.
Right. So things like favourite takeaway.
Favourite takeaway? Oh man, there's so much. You know, I'm bad on food as well. I love food. Do you know what? It's going to have to be the most common one, Domino's.
That's not the most Chinese for me.
The most common for me.
Oh, for you?
Like, we want to have the most of,
Oh.
yeah, Domino's.
So you'd order a pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
Yeah.
I'd order a Chinese.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what part of it though? I'm dead like impatient when it comes. So with where I live, I know that if I order Domino's, it's with me in 15 minutes. Like, it's real quick.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the others, it's like an hour and a half. And by
Yeah,
the time
yeah.
I've ordered it, I'm like so angry by the time it gets, I don't want to eat it.
Yeah. Okay. Fair
So-
enough. Right. Best quality in people.
Ooh, honesty all day long.
Okay. Yeah. Communication for me.
Yeah, valid. Yeah, if I could have two. Yeah.
Yeah. Communication is key for me.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I fill in the gaps in my head. So say, let's just take I'm talking to someone. I'm not talking to anybody, but let's just say there's a bloke that's caught my eye. I don't know. We've swapped numbers, and we're messaging each other, and I don't know, or talking on the phone, and then there's like a silence or whatever. You automatically would think, oh, okay, that's a bit unusual or whatever.
Yeah.
If they say, oh, really sorry, really busy today, catch you later. That for me, that communication
Makes
is
all the difference,
yeah.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Same with podcast guests. You know, people that can communicate with you about everything. You know, just communication for me is key.
There's my logo saying "Let's talk." I really should have said communication, shouldn't
No,
I?
yeah, but honesty.
Yeah.
You know, yes, honesty and
I
communication.
think they go well together, don't they? Because if someone's going to communicate dishonestly, then it's an issue.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You need the pair.
Massively, yeah. And I think on a lot on just traits on people. Oh, you're getting fed up. Yeah. Traits on people, like qualities, like in a relationship. What would be your, you know, top qualities in a relationship?
In a relationship,
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah. See.
I would have said that anyway without you bringing it up. But yeah, I've found, and that's lived experience. That's lived experience because I previously wouldn't have communicated and I'd have acted out.
Yeah.
I have addressed that massively the older that I've gotten. So I probably over communicate in a relationship now.
Yeah.
Like my wife will tell you that. She's like, "Oh, sometimes just let it go." But
Yeah.
I will, because I've experienced the other side of it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. And being able to laugh.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes, I mean, I always find this more often than not, right? So, you know, if you've got someone that's absolutely drop dead gorgeous, 9 times out of 10, they have,
Dull.
yeah, dull as dishwater, mate.
Yeah.
And I've been out with some people or yeah, gone on dates with some people that are absolutely drop dead gorgeous, got nothing about them. And I would much rather go out with someone that isn't model, you know, material. I don't like that. It sounds quite shallow.
I
But
know what you're saying though, but I think people who are inherently good looking and are aware of it maybe don't develop all their other sort of personality
yeah,
traits because they've relied so heavily on their looks.
exactly, yeah. And I don't like that. Do you know what I really don't like? If I'm flicking through, say, Instagram and there's pictures of like groups of lads, I'm going to give you a classic example. They're at like Ocean Beach in Ibiza or whatever, and like there's a group of lads. This is horrible to say, but I literally look at the picture and be like, ugh. Honestly, really puts me off because I just think that for me, I'd much rather watch a reel of someone that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But I think that comes with maturity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because you get that I think when you're younger, it's all about image. When you get a bit older and you realise that actually, like, how interesting is a six pack after a few years and you've seen it however many times.
Yawn.
But the person, like you say, is dull as dishwater. So yeah, it's I think maturity tunes you into that.
Right, one more before we go on to our Spin Justice of the Week. You're on holiday, sunbathe all day, or sightsee?
Sightsee.
Oh my God, I'm the total opposite.
Really? I can't, mate. I can't sit still. I've got about 2 hours max in me, probably for a whole holiday.
Do you know, that's me in general life. I can't sit still. So if I'm at home, I don't ever really sit still. But if I'm on holiday, I'll lie on that sun lounger for 2 weeks, not move.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm not. I speak to people like that. They're like, I'm like, oh, what was Crete like? Like, I don't know. We didn't leave the hotel.
That's me.
Right. I'm honestly, if I go on holiday, I'll probably sit down on that sunbed. I'm like, right, I'm gonna chill out, and within half an hour, I'll be like, my leg will be tapping. I'll be like looking around, and should we just go for a little walk up that way? Luckily,
You said it again.
it's a banned word. Luckily, my wife is the same.
Yeah.
So if we go on holiday, we tend to walk for miles and miles.
Yeah.
It's like, let's go explore.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I'll read books, I'll listen to podcasts, listen to music, but I will lie on that sun lounger all day.
I think it would really benefit me if I was like that.
Yeah.
Because it would be great to just detach and chill. But yeah, in reality, I'm not. I'm not. Unless I'm hungover. That's the only. If I was hungover, not interested in.
You can just sit and rot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fair dues. Right, Spin Justice of the Week. Have you got one?
I have. It's a deep one though.
Go on.
To be fair,
it's all right.
It is the ongoing governmental sort of lack of input and attention into the mental health crisis.
Yeah, fair
I've got to go with that because it's everything that I'm trying to raise awareness around. But I touched on it a bit earlier. There's this misconception that the government are doing more to help. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. In fact, they're repeatedly reducing mental health budgets in the community. And one of the surprising statistics that I learned when I was studying psychology and social science was that the time where the UK government put the most money into mental health was back, I think it was like 1950. Ever since then, it's been on a slide. Because at 1950, they still had the institutions, so the asylums.
Right, yes.
And the asylums were big stately homes, and every county had to have one, and they cost an absolute fortune to run and staff. That was the time where the government, per head of capita, because it's not like you could turn around and go, oh, well, they put X billion in now, but that's because there's more people in the country and the inflation rate. But when you average it, so per head of population, it's lower than it's ever been. They're consecutively cutting it, and it's a massive travesty. I don't know how they're getting away with it. There you go. That's my injustice of the week.
Good for you, yeah. Love that. Do you want to know mine? It's not the same as yours, but it's the dentist. Right. I forgot, because I forget everything. I have to write everything down. And I don't know if that's partly because I'm going through the menopause, I'm on the HRT, or because I'm just that busy that I can't retain anything. I don't know. But I forget things. Anyway, I made this dentist appointment and forgot. But in fairness to them, they did not send me a reminder. So at some stage, I've remembered that I haven't gone. And I don't know when it was, but I thought, shit, I didn't go to that appointment. I definitely made an appointment, didn't go. So when I called them up to say, I've missed an appointment, they said, and I need to rebook, need to remake this appointment. And they were like, basically, like, you're barred.
Really?
Yeah, you can't.
How many times have you done this so high?
Well, they said I'd not turned up to 3 appointments, and I was like, I don't think it's 3. And in fairness to me, you didn't send a reminder.
Yeah.
And is there any way I can appeal this? Because the faff of having to go and find another dentist and all this. Anyway, I had to pay, didn't I? Had to pay like a penalty for not going. And then I had to pay up front for the appointment.
It's private or NHS?
Well, it is an NHS dentist, but I don't get the NHS benefit from it, if that makes sense.
Right,
so it's like, it was for a hygienist appointment. So it's what you have to pay for. So I had to call up the other day, pay. Oh, I had to really appeal my case, by the way, and say, I'm really sorry. I'm just so busy and I'm going through the menopause. Please feel sorry for me. I can't remember everything. And you didn't send me a reminder. So they went, all right, okay, you've got to pay a penalty and then pay for the appointment up front.
Yeah.
And we'll see you. So I went yesterday. But when I went in, I went, don't even start. I don't want to come across as offensive, but what I need from you is a non-judgmental scale and polish.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you're going to tell me to do all the things like use floss and all of this stuff that I'm probably not going to do because I'm too busy. But I'm going to come back in 6 months and we're going to do this again, okay? Because they're going to need cleaning again. So just don't judge me. I'm going to put my headphones in and listen to a podcast because I don't like the sound of the tools. And then I'm going to go and then I'm going to come back and we're going to do it again. Okay, so just don't, all of that.
Go back in there.
So that was mine. That's mine. So yeah.
Valid.
So have you got any shout outs?
Yeah, man. Massive shout out to my wife. I've got to give that one. See you, Carl. I've got to give a shout out to my wife because in honesty, I wouldn't be sat here, but I definitely wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if she hadn't have pushed me where I needed pushing. So it kind of speaks to the value of having that strong, supportive partner. Massive thing in life. And a massive shout out to everybody. That's my guests, listeners, that includes you, my sponsors and everyone that has had anything to do with the Talking Tradesman podcast so far, because it's blown me away, the reaction to it. I really feel it's only just getting started. So I'm hugely thankful that people have got involved and supported to the extent that they have. So big shout out to everyone involved. Yeah, very much so. Mine is to see this mug. Oh, do? So, up close and personalised, they are a business that's obviously personalised gifts. So you see, you've got your merch. I've got a lot of spin merch that's been made. So it's T-shirts, water bottles and things like that. But Ellie, who's the mind or one of the minds behind it, made me this as a gift. And she's made Carl one. I put it on my socials the other day. So we've both got our own mugs with the Spin Justice on the front and Hayley on the back and Carl on the back of Carl's. But she's also made me T-shirts for Spin, water bottles with a really good logo on. So up close and personalised is my shout out for helping me with my branding. So fair play to them. Very much. So thanks very much for coming on. Great chat. Pleasure, mate. The Talking Tradesman. If you've not listened, make sure you go and check in with that. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks, Carl. This episode was sponsored by DNA Boxing School of Excellence and Southport Building and Property Services. If you have a topic that you want to discuss, get in touch at b31spinjustice@gmail.com or via Instagram @spinjustice.